Welcome to Deeges and Dragons.
I thought this was going to be hard.
Welcome to Deeges and Dragons.
Who wants some of the ripper?
They're state champs, baby. Woo!
Smoke heroes!
He's completely Captain
I'm a man of the people.
Shattered world.
Ripper knows! Ripper always knows!
Degecast.
And welcome to another episode of the Degecast, the supplemental podcast for our YouTube show, Deeges and Dragons, a show that highlights the therapeutic aspects of tabletop role-playing games. I'm your host, Nate Lindberg, and you can find me on Twitter at Nate Lindberg, and you can follow our brand on Twitter, Facebook, and most importantly, YouTube at Deegetime. Now, season 1 of Deeges and Dragons is winding down and coming to a close. And for the last few weeks, we've been catching up and checking in with some of the developers of some of our season 1 games, partly to say hey, partly to see what's new and exciting that they may have for all of you. With me tonight is one of the developers behind one of my personal favorites from season 1, Kids on Bikes, Doug Levandowski. Doug, welcome back to the show. Great to have you, and I hope you had a great holiday.
Thanks, Nate. Yeah, thanks so much for having me back on. It was fantastic. It was, as I've been telling people, the parts that didn't make me unbelievably sad were fantastic.
Excellent. I wish I didn't have to say the same, but I'm going to actually say the same.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, it was nice to have like a more low key holiday. The reason for that, not being able to see and hug all the people I want to see and hug, was a bit of a bummer. But
by far.
I'm getting my hug and arms worked out for a Hug Tour 2021. So
there we go. There we go. Once we can actually finally get out of the house.
That's right.
I know kind of before we went on the air, I was mentioning we're going to be taking our characters from season 1, Kids on Bikes, and launching them into space. And I'm actually really excited about this, not just because I really enjoyed Kids on Bikes and we're launching them into space, but this is actually, we're going to actually bring another player in. This is going to be one of the few games we're going to have 5 people for.
Nice.
And my sister, it's her very first time ever playing a game.
Oh my gosh.
And so she's super excited about it. We're super excited about it. I'm stoked. I can't wait to actually get her into this universe.
Oh man, it is so cool that that's going to, so this is like her first time on the podcast or her first time playing role-playing games?
Both.
Nice.
Both.
I'm flattered. Thank you.
Now, but one of the things that you did say was Teens in Space is kind of one of your favorites. Is there a reason for that? It's kind of like you're like a sci-fi nerd or something along those lines?
For sure. So this was after we did Kids on Bikes. Hunters and Renegade said, do you guys want to do another one? We said, absolutely. And the sort of 80s movie kind of thing was more Gilmore speed, and the Star Trek, Star Wars was much more my thing growing up.
Same here.
And so that was just that was nostalgia for me. And so since Kids on Bikes was such a nostalgia fest.
By far, yeah.
The Teens in Space also, like, for me, that was like my childhood growing up. Like when I wasn't playing D&D, I was just wearing out those 3 Star Wars tapes. And I have a daughter who just turned 3, and I have a Yoda hat that she likes me to wear in the winter. So it's got like the ears and everything.
Excellent.
And so she was like, Daddy, I want you to wear that hat. I was like, oh, you do? Why is that? She said, because Yoda is my favorite character from Star Wars. I was like, kid, same. You haven't seen any Star Wars yet, though. Like, you want to watch it? She said, no, I have to wait until I'm older.
Wow.
And I was like, you don't. No, you don't. I was watching Star Wars when I was younger than you. And she said, oh, no, I have to wait until I'm older. Chewbacca scares me. So,
well, hey, at least she knows. At least she knows.
Yeah. She's a surprisingly self-aware 3-year-old. But yeah, so Teens in Space was sort of like my homage to like my childhood, dreaming about being out in the stars and like all of these weird alien creatures. And so I love it for that reason. I also love it because we just asked a bunch of our friends, like, hey, do you want to kick in an alien species? And all of the really basic, like, oh yeah, that one's clearly a Vulcan. That one's clearly this. That was us. And then all the stuff where you're like, who the hell comes up with that? That's them. Yeah, I mean, just like such wonderful, strange things. Like the sentient bodies of water, the living clouds, the fuzzy hug monsters, like it just all of those creatures just make me so happy.
Oh, by far.
And to have like a bunch of my friends jump in and do stuff for the game and have it in the core book was just fantastic.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Especially when you get a bunch of people kind of collaborate, things like that. Actually kind of one of the things that we did was the Free Content Friday, where we did the audio hooks for December this past month here. That was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed
so much
that.
Fun. Yeah,
that was a blast. If you ever do something like that again, sign me up. That was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I really love doing that. And it's, I think, not going to happen for Free Content Friday this coming year because of some changes we're doing with that. Because the plan this year is, rather than what we did last year, which was here's this, here's that, all these little disconnected things that were really, really cool on their own. The plan this year is to put together a cohesive 12-month package.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's going to be focused on Kids on Brooms. So,
okay, sweet.
Yeah. John, Spencer, and I just did the collaborative. We're almost done with the collaborative school creation for the school. And then January is going to be the introduction to that school, a new student tour.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That should be a blast. And I'm really looking forward to playing that too. I think we kind of have that penciled in for season 3, so it's a little bit down the way, but that's going to be a blast once we get there.
Yeah. So we have 2 new Powered by Kids on Bikes projects that we're working on. One is in the playtesting but still secret stage.
Sure.
So I can't talk about that yet, but that's what John and I were working on over the summer and this fall. And now that we've got that wrapped up, we're going to be moving into another one that we're going to be doing. I'm really not sure how much I can say, but I can say this. The design process for that is going to be different and very public.
Cool.
At least that's the plan, assuming we can work it out with the source that we're going to use to make it public. Sorry for the vague speak here.
That's all right. Because I totally get it. Sometimes you can only say so much.
Yeah. The big one, though, speaking of Teens in Space, and speaking of working with awesome creative people. So we have Strange Adventures Volume 1 and Volume 2 for Kids on Bikes, which are, each one has about 20 town settings in it.
Sure.
To sort of spark everything and get people rolling. For Cosmic Adventures, which is tentatively what we're calling it, we have 2 4-part adventures. One written by Cleo Yunsu Davis, who created some alien creatures for Teens in Space, or one of the alien species in Teens in Space, and who did an adventure prompt in Strange Adventures Volume 2. So they did a 4-parter that's really cool, a more linear, though not necessarily railroady, but much more move in this direction kind of thing.
Sure.
And then Kristen and Tim Devine, they both did a species in Teens in Space, and they co-authored one of the adventure prompts in Strange Adventures Volume 2 as well. They did a 4-part adventure that's super sandboxy. It's called a 4-part adventure, but really that's just because there's 4 big events. This could be a 30-part adventure if you explore every corner of this universe that they created.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so I'm really excited about that. This summer, I spent some time editing those, and we're in copy editing and the art stage for that. So, yeah, that's going to be really exciting. Yeah, I think it's going to really knock people's socks off, especially because people have been asking for these pre-generated adventures.
Because it's that way you can kind of just pick it up and play. You don't have to necessarily worry about crafting your own world, which is kind of always that's always the way I like to do it. But if you just want to pick it up and play, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and the whole pick up and play thing was something that John and I thought we'd pulled off with the core game in terms of just encouraging people to just dive in, right?
That's for sure.
There aren't wrong answers, but that's definitely been something that people have really been looking for. I mean, I don't think I would surprise anybody when I say, like, this is what people want. We'll give it to them.
Yeah, for sure.
More of the other things in the line will be getting something similar. So.
Now, I did say a little bit ago, my sister is going to be diving into her very first game here with Teens in Space. What would you say? What would your best advice be for somebody first time ever playing an RPG, diving into Teens in Space?
Yeah, so this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And Spencer Stark, who's one of the co-designers on Kids on Brooms, had a great Twitter thread about this, I guess about a week ago, that often when we play games, we think about the actions that our characters are doing. Mm-hmm. And we think that's the role playing. But better role players think about the motivations behind what their characters are doing, which we've built into Kids on Bikes and Teens in Space and Kids on Brooms with what your sort of character goals are. But really, really great actors read the script, think about the actions, then think about the motivations, and then get to the emotion. And starting out with the emotion as a player, I think is a really strong way to think about really what compels your character, what drives your character, rather than just, okay, I'm putting an extra, I'm spending 6 of my improvement points to give myself a +3 in brawn. So I'm going to be the tough guy of the group. I'm going to do the lifty stuff.
That makes sense.
But thinking about, like, how is my character feeling at this moment in here? And there's no wrong answer there, right? So, like, if I would be scared in a firefight, maybe my character, who's this, like, sociopathic raccoon, is, like, super excited to be here and wants this firefight to go on as long as possible. That's, like, an important... And actually, I just did it there. The emotion there leads so naturally into the motivation that and then the action comes so clearly out of that if players can think about the emotion that their character is feeling, boom, like the rest is just do the thing that the emotion would do.
I'm really glad that you said that, because that's something that we've talked about quite a bit on both this show and on our YouTube show on Dungeons and Dragons. Is kind of just being able to take whatever it is that take your character, and like you just said, something you might be fearful of, but your character might not be fearful of, or what have you, whatever emotion that might be. But then role play that out, experience that, and and have fun with it, roll with it, and experience something different and new.
And then outside of the whole Kids on Bikes universe, I'm actually still in it. One more thing that I mentioned.
Sure.
Since this was just announced, I can talk about this too. My buddy Luke Minch and I did a card game based on Kids on Brooms, Duel of Wands. And so it's a 2-player head-to-head spell-slinging card game coming out from Renegade sometime in Q1 next year.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so that can get integrated into the game if you want to. Doesn't have to. It's a standalone thing. You don't need the role-playing game to play it.
But you can mix the two if you want, like, so you can basically add it in as like an extra mechanic to the game.
Yeah. So the concept is that this is like a codified way for casters to go prove who's better.
Okay.
And so it's not as based on, like, we moved away from the idea that, like, one character is just inherently more powerful than the other one. There's part of the codification of it puts them on an equal playing field.
Right.
And so, yeah, so if you want to have 2 casters go against each other, settle a dispute that way, it's sort of like Pistols at Dawn in the spellcasting world, except nobody dies.
No, I like that. I really like that.
In the end, nobody gets hurt except for their pride. So,
no, absolutely. Because, like, even you start thinking about, like, wizard, Harry Potter or other sort of wizard type movies or something, or even, I guess, kind of especially in the Harry Potter universe, because if you get kids, they're learning how to do the spells. Some of them aren't quite as good as the others, things like that. So yeah, that kind of definitely does put them on more of an equal playing field, and or like you could have a moment where you try to cast a spell, but maybe you don't get a good card, and you end up you kind of like bad roll of the die or something like that. I like that.
And then I've been doing more as sort of like my independent, just sort of clear my brain kind of exercises. I've been doing a handful of PDF only Kickstarter projects.
Oh, sweet.
And just wrapped up one.
That's right. I wanted to talk to you about that.
Yeah. Just wrapped up one called Below, about involving getting lost in a cave and not being able to find your way out, as a none too subtle metaphor for depression and hopelessness. Yeah.
And this was one that this was the journaling one, correct?
Yes.
Yes. This is interesting to me. So how does it, just kind of like a quick little overview, how does that work?
Sure. So yeah, this is the third journaling game I've done through Kickstarter in about a year. So this time last year, Banana Chan and I did the Wishing Sigil, which is like a Victorian era holiday themed. The whole concept came out of like, we want to do an advent calendar game where like you open something up every day. Obviously, like physically putting that together is unbelievably expensive. So we brainstormed and came up with the idea of emailing a prompt every day.
Okay.
And then that proved to be a real pain in the ass.
I can imagine that would eventually, over time, coming up with 365 prompts a year.
Yeah. Well, for that one, it was only 25 days, right? So advent calendar length.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But even so.
Yeah. And the writing was done before we hit launch on the project, but like sending it out every day and then having people say like, oh, I've decided I want to play this in one lump. Can you take me off of the email list? You know, it's just too much.
Fair enough.
So I did another one in the fall about running a zoo for mystical creatures with a college student who was interning with me over the summer. And then just had this dream about a journaling game where you're illustrating. And I was like sitting in the middle of the woods illustrating on the darkest day of the year, December 21st. And woke up and was like, oh, yeah, I can do that. Okay, cool. So it's a 10-day journaling game delivered all as one PDF. It went out on the 21st. That basically the way it works is you create your character, you decide how close you want it to be to yourself, how far away you want it to be in your day zero. I'm a big fan of session zero, no matter what people on Twitter say.
Yeah, I hear you.
And then for the 10 days, you go through and you get a set of prompts. And each day has, I think, about 3 questions involved. And you tell the story of your time in this space that you're not able to get out of.
Okay.
And without giving
too much away,
you know, and I talk about this a lot on the Kickstarter page, and on my itch page, I talk about this too. That it is a real thinly veiled metaphor for depression. And in playtesting, some of the players said that it sort of dragged some stuff up for them. Sure. And so it's definitely not a game to be playing lightly. And a couple people on the Kickstarter sent me a message and said like, oh, this is so exciting. I'm hoping this will help me like process my depression.
Yeah,
which is not what this is, right? Like maybe it'll work that way. Maybe that'll do that for some people, but it's not a clinical tool.
Right.
You know, in the spirit of content warnings, I don't want this to worsen anything for people, but I mean, everybody knows themselves, right? So if like dealing with this through fiction is going to be something that helps them, then cool, right? I think games can be designed for fun. I think games can be designed for education, for psychological well-being. I just think this is in a fourth category of it's a game designed to convey an emotional experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's not, you don't necessarily want it to be known as a game that it could be used as a therapeutic tool or something along those lines.
Right.
That's not what you designed it for. Right.
Right.
That makes sense. But yeah, no, certainly if it can help people or something like that, because like, yeah, we were talking about it a little bit, on Twitter and I was reading the Kickstarter. Like, unfortunately, I happened to see it after the Kickstarter concluded, but I was reading it and it certainly did seem interesting to me because like, I've heard of single player role playing games or journaling, games or things like that in the past. But just especially for what we do here on Deej Time, kind of dealing with the therapeutic aspects of gaming. It certainly was something that kind of stood out. And I like the way that you described it as kind of like trying to convey an emotional experience. Even for somebody that may not necessarily understand depression or haven't gone through it or something like that. But that's cool. That's cool. It's a very interesting idea. And
and there's a lot of really cool journaling games out there. I played one not too long ago by Jian Shim and Kevin Culp, Wait For Me. It's about getting unstuck in time and being sort of bounced around in your own timeline.
Sure.
And so that was really fascinating. And I think in the same vein has a lot of room for self-reflection and self-growth. Or if you're playing a character totally unlike yourself, just interesting, weird stuff. So that was a really rewarding experience. Tim Hutchings' 1,000-Year-Old Vampire is one that I'm really excited to play, about being a 1,000-year-old vampire. And
kind of the trials and tribulations of being 1,000 years old.
Yeah. And my understanding is that it deals a lot with memory and memory loss, that like when you hit 1,000, there's stuff like you just don't remember. Like, didn't I have a kid one time? I think I had a kid.
I think I did. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So I'm stoked to dive into that. They're On to Me, which is Banana's vlogging game. So similar, but if you're brave enough, posting this out to the wide world to see, about uncovering a conspiracy theory over, I think, 14 days.
Because like I said, they're games that I've heard of. I think, honestly, you might have even actually been the one that first mentioned it when talking to you a while back. I think even talking about might have been Wishing Sigil, might have been the new game there. But it's certainly intriguing, but I haven't actually like bit the bullet and like looked in anything. But I've got a lot of free time on my hands right now, like alone time, free time. So something like that might not be a bad thing for me to give a shot, give it a try out.
Well, then, obligatory plug here. If you want to check out, I almost said Wishing Sigil, and then I almost said Wait For Me, which isn't even my game. Below. So I've set up my itch.io page, Itch.io. I don't even know how to pronounce the .io thing. Yeah, I know. So I guess Itch.io. So Doug Levandowski.itch.io has that game up, and it's going to have more once I sort out the profit sharing with my co-designers on some stuff. Not that we're haggling over terms. Itch just makes it real difficult to share profits. So you have to do a kind of roundabout way to make that happen, which I'm working on.
You are not the first person to say that to me.
Yeah.
But no, Doug, like I said, certainly appreciate you coming out, talking to me tonight, kind of filling us in on what's going on in your world.
Oh, dude, my absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right, Doug, thank you very much for being the very last thing on this channel for 2020. Guys, 2020 is over. I mean, it's almost over. We only got a few more days left, but it's almost over. I'm so glad. I can't wait. 2021, fingers crossed, is going to be a much better year for all of us. I really hope. However, the first person we will be talking to right here on the Degecast in the new year will be Project Biomodus creator Bear Winters. I know we just had his long-form interview not that long ago, but we recorded that back in April. So I figured it would be kind of nice to sit down, chat with him. It was actually, I believe it was the day after Christmas, we sat down, chatted with him, and talked about what was going on in his world, his life, and found out what he got for Christmas. Guys, we'll see you in 2021. Happy New Year.